Welcome back to the house on Irongate Street. It looks like Helena has made more improvements. You might remember that at the end of the last video, I indicated that I would be decorating the second floor next. For timing reasons, I decided to flip the posts in the video and deal with the staircase, chandelier, and other things first. I promise the next post I will be doing the decorating of the second floor. Besides, there's no way to get up to the second floor from the first without a staircase. So it starts on the first floor and spirals up to the front of the second, and the good news is that it is a kit, so that makes it a lot easier. Upstairs you'll find the lovely lighted chandelier. Helena thought the room needed some bling, and the chandelier fits the bill, I think. Out on the balcony is Helena's spy scope. Of course, it's a necessity for any explorer. When you first saw the house, you might have wondered how in the world do you get up to the balcony? Well, in this tutorial, I'm going to show you how to build a custom set of steps and all the other new features. Now, the spiral staircase comes in an easy to assemble kit. It comes with sheets of the stairs. There's the stair, the support piece, and then a decorative end piece. And then it also comes with a wooden dowel that you attach or run these up the dowel. There are enough stairs, or 16, for you to use to work with the house that I've been building. But if you want to use this with something else and you need more stair steps, there is an add-on kit with 8 more stairs. So you could get those, or you just want to make a small staircase. You could always just buy the add-on kit and use a wooden dowel to go through the middle. Now, to assemble the stair, what you want to do is you want to take the support piece and you want to glue it to the very edge of the stair. And then the decorative piece, you want to glue it long ways to the edge of the stair and the edge of the support. Now, you could also glue it on this side like this. The difference is going to be that depending upon where you want your first step to be. So in the case of the staircase that I'm building to go with the house, it's going to sit on the outside of the house. So if you think of this white piece of paper as the house, and this is the front of the house, the sides, and then back here's where it's open, my staircase is going to go from the bottom on the back side up to the top, because there really wasn't enough room in the house to use this and all the other things that I wanted to put into it. So what I did was I put my support here on this front side, on that front side there, or well, it's no front or back, just on that side. That way, this first stair is going to be inside the house. Then the top stair is going to go up to the top, and it's going to lead right into the second floor. Now, if I did it the other way, then this would be completely flipped. So even though, it doesn't really have a side because it's going in a circle, you do want to think about where do I want to enter the staircase and where do I want to leave that, and what will happen depending on which side I put the support on. Now, what you might want to do is just put these on your skewer and just see how they look, and then think about spread them apart without the support stuck to them or anything before you glue it together, and just figure out, okay, this is the side I want to put it on. Another thing you might want to do is you've got plenty of wooden dowel here, and you might also, once you get the stairs put together, you might want to go ahead and just thread them onto this and play with them, so that you can decide how much dowel do you want on the bottom and how much dowel do you want on the top. Now, because this first stair is going to be inside the room and this is going to be outside, I will probably put a little bit of a base under here, even though it's going to be attached, just so it's doesn't look like it's suspended. But depending on what you're doing, you might want to put a large base on it if it's in the inside of the house, or if it's completely on the outside of the house. So think about those things, and I think it'll help you if you go ahead and thread these on before you permanently glue them in place, just to make sure you've got things where you want and you have them on the dowel the way you want them. Now, when you actually go to gluing, what you want to do is glue this very edge of the stair above to the very edge of the stair below. So you want it to be just like that, just to the very corner, and that gives you the biggest surface area for the step. And then you would just keep doing that once you, like I say, once you decide where you want to position these on the dowel. So now I'm going to go ahead and finish putting mine together and painting it. And then next I'll talk to you about what I'm going to do for railing. When it's optional, you wouldn't have to put railing on this if you don't want to, but I'm going to do some railing on this and just show you what are the options that you could do. On the left-hand side, you can see the staircase assembled and painted in the manner that I described to you. I decided to go with, it's the gray color that you see on the outside of the house for all the balconies. And then I went with an orange, kind of a copper color. I thought that went well with the paint scheme, the color scheme that's on the outside of the house. And I ended up decorating the fronts of each of the stairs with the flourishes that you see at the top there. I ended up painting them with the same copper paint. And then for the spindles, I used these chair legs. They come in sets of 4, so I bought 4 sets of 4. And I painted those separately before I attached them with a combination of the copper color and the dark gray color. And then to create the railing in between each one, I used a piece of chair rail, and it only took one piece to do the whole thing. And I basically cut that into sections so that I could put that in between each of the spindles. The way I did that is I figured out the first one, the measurements of the first one, and then I used it as a template to cut all the rest. So that made it easy. And there were a couple where I had to adjust it just slightly, because as much as you always try to center these things on each stair, it can be off just a little bit. So there was enough room for me. I cut the first one just slightly big, so that way I had a way to trim it just a little bit so that it fit nicely in between each one of the spindles. And then for the base, because I'm locating the stair itself on the inside of the bottom floor, I needed a little bit of a base because I thought it would look goofy just to have the dowel just sitting there by itself. And so I ended up using some of these little gear type things. They come in a set. You can see the picture of the set below. And I used a couple of those and stacked them, and then in between them I just stacked some junk metal just to give it some more height, because I didn't want to cover up the pretty parts of the gear type things. And so you'll see me use those again, and there's also a second set that looks even more gear-like than that I used. Now in this picture you get a better idea of where the staircase starts and how the stairs is just on the inside of the first floor. And there's just enough space for a person to walk in and then go up the staircase. And then the second image, you can see here that the staircase ends at the very top of the second floor, and it's flush with that, and I actually glued it there. So I glued the stair at the bottom, and then I glued this stair at the top, and that's holding the staircase in place. Now, if you remember earlier, I was talking about which side, depending on which side you put the little front piece on the stair, will indicate which direction the staircase is going to go. So if I had put that on the other side, not the side that you see, but on the other side, the staircase would have started and ended in a different place. You would have had to start it and end it more in the middle of the two rooms, in order to get one of the stairs inside the room and the other stair at the top. So that was part of what I was talking about to be mindful of, is that depending on which side you put that front piece is going to determine how you can use it in terms of where you can fit it, if you're going to put it on the outside. Now, if you're in the inside, it doesn't matter, unless you've got it like in a corner or something and it gives you some odd direction where you can't get onto the stairs because of the direction you've chosen. But if you put it on the outside like this, that's something to keep in mind. And it was important that I have it as far to the side as I could, so that I didn't block as much of the view of the inside as possible. And then here you just have another view, kind of the staircase going all the way up from the outside. And you can see the base there that the dowel's glued onto, and then how it curves and goes all the way up the top. Now for the steps going up to the balcony, what I've done is come up with a template for you. This will be on my blog for you to print and cut out if you would like. And what I've done is I've printed that, cut them out, and glued these onto some lightweight chipboard. You can see the 3 stairs. And then what I'm going to do is to come in and cover the stairs with the same paper that I used for the floor. upstairs. And if you recall from the first video, I basically, the pattern is very large, so I cut this into strips. And here I have a bunch of strips. And I like to ink the edges so that you don't see any of that white. And I'll actually be gluing these strips on to the tops of these. So this will now match the floor. Now, in order to separate each one of these, what I've done is cut a set of same chipboard, lightweight chipboard that will go fit around this, around the circle that's the step. And for this, I'm going to cover it with another strip of the paper that's cut to fit each of the strips. So this will be covered on the top, and then I'll have this going around. Now, once I was looking at it, I was thinking, you know, this is really kind of hard to glue such a fine edge onto something like this. So I was looking for something that would help me, that would give me something to glue against, so it not just on the top of this, you know, surface to surface, but something that I could put this on. And so what I came up with is using plastic lids. They're really easy to cut up. And I've cut up one of these, and they actually even have lines that I used to cut. And what I would do is come in here and glue these. I'll turn it this way. Glue these wherever you want that piece of this to go. And what I think I'm going to do for more support is I'm going to have this slightly on the inside. I'm not going to glue it right to the edge. I'm going to go in a little bit from the edge of that, and so you'll have a tiny little lip. But I will use these, of course, I'll trim them so that they're shorter. They don't need to be that big. So whatever fits. And I will glue those in place, and now that gives me a nice surface area to glue this strip on. And then what I will do is I'll just paint that little bitty edge before I put these on, so that way you won't be able to see the chipboard under there. And then you'll have the wood paper here, and you'll have the wood paper on top of here. And then these will just stack up, and after I get them papered and put together, they will just stack up, and there will be 3 steps taking you up to the balcony. Now, if you don't want to use something like this and you want something that's smaller and takes up less space, you could always just use a series of matchboxes staggered that you glue together to make steps coming up to the balcony. So now you can see the finished balcony stairs, the 3 stacked on top of each other, and they fit right underneath the balcony. Another thing I'll mention is, you know, if you have another project where you need to make a custom pair of staircase or steps like this, you can always resize them to work for your project, or have more steps if you wanted to. You just simply make a bigger step for the bottom that comes out even further and just keep the same curve. And like I mentioned, that the template is on my blog post for this particular video, and you can just download that and print it and use it for your house. The base of the chandelier consists of different sized rings. I originally thought I would make 3 tiers, but because of the height of the ceiling, that wasn't an option. And also I found that once I got all the beads on the smallest ring, it didn't really fit nicely inside of the next sized ring. So I ended up using the biggest and the smallest. So I used the earring, which is on the end, and then I used the small one, which is a keychain ring. So it doesn't matter what you use, just you need things that are rings that you can hang the beads off of, and where one will fit inside the other, where the beads will slightly fit one tier into the other. The next thing I did was painted the rings with Victorian gold patina paints. Patina paints are made for metals. They're also great for any non-porous surface like plastic or glass. So I've painted those, and then I've added 4 chains to each jump ring. And the reason I add the chains now is that's going to make it really easy for me to divide the beads up. And I did that for both of the rings. Number 2 shows you just the earring, but I did exactly the same thing for the keychain ring. Then I started out making a bunch of the hanging beads, and I started with the glass bugle bead. It's an inch long. That's in number 3. And I threaded through an eye pin, and then snipped that eye pin off short enough to just be able to make a loop with another tool. And then that is basically the bead that I will be hanging as the crystals for the chandelier. And then in number 4, you can see I've added all those beads to the top ring and using jump rings. And I believe that I used 12 beads in between each chain. And then if you go to number 5, I started to prep that top thing because that's going to be the top, the small ring is going to be the top of the chandelier. And so what I did is I took a piece of filigree and I punched out the center of it, and you will see the picture of that in number 5, and then you can see how I attached each of the 4 chains got attached to each corner of the filigree piece. And then I'm going to make it the size for the straw to fit through. Now the straw is what I'm using to thread the light strings through the ceiling down into the chandelier. So that's why you have to cut that size, and you just have to make sure that whatever straw you use is big enough to thread however many lights you're going to thread through. In this case, I think this is one of the straws that I got. It's like the big straws you get from the big cups in at Circle K or 7-Eleven, those kind of places. Now here is the details on how I dealt with the 2 lights. These are fairy lights. They just have little lights on the string, and you can see the straw. I painted it with the same patina Victorian gold. And so in the first one you can see how I've threaded those 2 through the straw, and then the second one you can kind of see like a little bit more of a blow up of that. And the third one you can see that I've made a hole in the ceiling that is the size of the straw, so that the straw and the with the lights in it can be threaded down. And in the last one there you see the 2 rings of beads put together. Now the second ring, I believe I used 18 beads between each of the 4 chains, and then the 4 chains of the bottom get attached to the ring on the top. And then of course now you can see how those chains that were attached to the filigree are attached to the ceiling. And I used a ceiling medallion from the architectural kit. I printed it twice. I cut out the centerpiece and mounted it on the second full image, and then both of those are backed with chipboard, so that's what gives it a little bit of dimension. And then you can see the strings of lights hanging down. Now what I did with those strings is the wire folds very easily, so I basically just folded that wire up with the lights on it so that it fit inside of the string, skinny enough to be inside of the top beaded ring, and then had it come down a little bit into the larger beaded ring. So I didn't worry about like it has to be done a certain way. There's just so much light, you don't need to worry about it. If you just fold it up and get it in there just so that you can't see it hanging out and have it kind of distributed between the 2, it'll look great. And now you see final pictures of the chandelier with the lights on. And I want you to notice how the light reflects off the ceiling and how bright it is with it reflecting off of all of those glass beads. And then the second one you can see here, the second picture, you get a little bit better idea. I took the picture with the lights off so you can see just how bright it is. You really get a lot of light from those 2 fairy lights, and again you can see all the reflection on the ceiling. One other thing I meant to mention earlier is that I did add glue on the roof or on the ceiling to keep that straw in place. So once I had everything down, I just added a whole bunch of glue around it just to kind of seal it in there. And of course I'm not attaching the roof permanently to the house, so that way I just lift the roof and I can turn the switches on the batteries and turn the lights on and off. So the spy scope that sits on the balcony is made using one of my favorite building materials. I think is a very extreme upcycling, which is straws, and using different sizes of straws. And in number 1 you can see all the different straw sizes from the smallest to the largest, and I just collect straws. In the smallest one I think it was like a stir, coffee stir or whatever. And then what I did to create the joints and also to keep one straw from sliding too far into another straw is I wrapped the straws at different locations with stickers, with these metallic stickers. Now another option that you could use if you didn't want to do stickers is that you could use jump rings. I used the stickers because it was easy. I didn't have to worry about having a jump ring that was gold and exactly the right size. So this kind of worked out well, and I could also make that ring as big as I wanted to make it. So after I cut the straws, wrapped each one, kind of put them inside each other, trying to figure out, okay, where do I want each one to start? Wrapping that plastic or those metallic stickers around it, then I slid them in and I added glue as I did that, so that would help them stay in place. Even though the ring of the sticker will keep it from sliding too far in, you still need to do something to keep it from falling back out. And so you can see the 5 straws incorporated. Now the first straw I painted a gold color, and then I ended up painting all the rest of it the black using the patina onyx color. That's the same type of paint that I used for the chandelier, for the rings, and also for the straw that I used there. And then in order to be able to mount the telescope or the spy scope on top of the base that I'm building, I use these little flourishes, and they're very easy to bend. I just bent one of them in 2 and then glued that onto the spy scope. Now to build the base, I'm going to incorporate again the straws and also another one of my favorite toothpicks. So in the first picture there, number 1, you see that I have glued round pointed toothpicks into these little brass feet or bead caps. I think they can be used for either one. And then after that, I glue the straws on top of that. Now the reason I used the toothpick was because it gives a lot more support to the straw. And if I just tried to glue the bottom of the straw to those little brass bead caps, because the straw's open at the bottom, you know, I just wouldn't have gotten as a good a contact area. So by gluing in the toothpicks first, but the pointed end goes right in that hole, and gluing that in place, and then the straws on top of that, I got a really nice, sturdy, stiff leg and good support for the rest of the base. Now, the straws are slightly higher, longer than the toothpicks are, and I clipped the actual end of that toothpick off just to make it shorter before I ended up gluing the straws on top of it. And that way I could glue another piece of a toothpick into the top, so just the little bit of the pointed part sticks out. And then I used that to go through the gear piece that you see here. Now that's part of that same set that I used for making the base of the staircase, and you can see it's got the 4 holes. So that straw, that little pointed part of the toothpick goes right up in that hole, and then I added some more little feet bead cap type things on top of that to cover those up and to add glue to that whole area. And then that's going to function as the base for the next piece. Now you can see in this picture I've added another gear type thing. This comes from a different set of gears. These have some really cool pieces in it, and I have glued that right on top of those 4 brass feet, and so that ends up being the surface for more bits and bobs to be added, and also to attach the telescope. And you see here from the picture of it, it has a hole in the middle, and so I was able to glue that flourish that was attached to the telescope. I was able to stick that in that hole and glue that in place, and that held the telescope in place. And also note, I didn't mention that when I was first saying it, think about when you attach that you want the telescope to be at an angle. So think about how that's going to stick in there and where you need to glue the flourish on so that the telescope is at an angle. And now I added a couple additional things that made it look more like there were controls in place. And you see you've got 2 little kind of cone looking like swirly beads. I glued those into the holes of the gear, and I felt it kind of looked like a lever. And then because of that little gear sun looking thing has all of the spokes on it, I took another one of the gears and glued it on one of those spokes as if it were a wheel that you could use maybe to turn the whole thing. So my thought was, okay, the little handles maybe adjust the height or the angle of the scope, and then maybe the wheel is something just to turn the scope around the whole base. And then here finally you see it, I decided to set it out on the balcony. I thought that was a good place for it. And also draw your attention back to the second video where I did the downstairs, the Explorer study. On the steamer trunk, I had a little mini version of this same thing. Same deal, straws made exactly the same way, just made it smaller and fewer straws. And then made a little tripod for that to sit on. As always, Alpha Stamps is carrying the products that I use, except for the few things that came from my stash. I will post the link to the blog post with additional pictures, the supply list, and any other information, as well as the template to download. If you're on my blog, then you're there. If you're not, the link will be in the description area at YouTube. That wraps up this segment, and stay tuned for the next one, which will be decorating the second floor.